Thank you, Nick. Patricia had circulated notes of our last meeting. Are there comments on them? And we should have a vote to approve. Are there proposed changes? I know, Warren, you had made a couple of comments. Is there anything further?
I did point out some spellings of some names, but that got corrected, so I think we're all set on that. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up about the minutes or the notes? The notes.
I thought that I just heard Warren had some comments. I didn't see them, so I'm not sure did we address them or not? I'm sorry, I don't during the day get to look at things very much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I sent it around a couple hours ago via email. Nothing serious, I would say, but one section I'm trying to get to it.
Shall I bring it up and we'll make edits in line?
I know one was a comment on the MMD, so it just seemed a little terse where we're talking about the PR. So in other words, the bullet said something about a commissioner, or someone identified as a commissioner of marketing or something. So it was just not clear. And I thought that was a comment Marie or one of the other MMD people brought up, but it just wasn't clear what it was saying in the bullet.
All right, let me share the screen so that if I need to make changes, you guys can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's, I think under here, right? MMD has identified a PR commissioner. Is that what you're talking about, Warren?
Yes.
So Marie? Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's just not clear what it says and what it means and what we said. So I just thought it needed some clarification.
I interpret that to say, and tell me if I'm wrong, Marie, that of their commissioners, they identified one who was going to be handling PR. Marie, is that correct?
No, I mean, the discussion that we had was about possibly sharing a PR. I don't know what that references to.
Thank you for
Marie was
catching.
talking about hiring someone.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should, besides eliminating it, should I change it to say anything else, or just really just to eliminate it from the minutes?
I mean, the discussion was that we were gonna look at possibly sharing some resources and that we were gonna create a little subgroup to look at it.
Okay, hold on. I want to make sure we get this.
And we have 2 intern positions, in the duties of which we've identified some PR activities. But I don't think we discussed that at the last meeting.
Good catch, Warren. Was there another one? Warren, you're on mute.
So these minutes were emailed?
Yes. I've emailed them on Friday. I should say Friday night. I was going to say Friday night, but it was really very early on Sunday morning. I think it was like 1:30 in the morning or something.
Yeah, I don't have them.
That's
Maybe
odd.
I'm not understanding where they would show up at, because some of the emails, I'm not getting them.
And that's
Warren's-
where, go ahead.
I was just going to say what Warren's other comment was. It was under other. I also think someone identified or recommended that we seek out county resources to help us.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that was in that larger conversation of marketing resources that we thought somewhere within the county we can get some direction.
So if I put discussion on interns being trained on how to conduct a public hearing, discussion on using county resources to assist in the public hearings? Is that what it was?
Yeah, because it was something to do with, they've done this before, right? So they do it all the time. So they're subject matter experts that are already out there that, and we're supposed to be working with the county, at least the procurement shop, whenever we can. So
Yes, that there should be some infrastructure in place already for how this has been done.
Patrick has said that he in fact has been primarily responsible for it.
I'm
I think
sorry.
I think the comment was in the context of training our interns how to set up a Zoom for a public hearing. I recall somebody suggesting that.
So if I did this, right, I'm gonna take this away, I'm gonna cut it out. And say discussion on using to assist in public hearings as they have experience and infrastructure in place, and then including, hold on. Oops, including interns being trained on how to conduct that. Does that work?
I think that captures it.
sounds good to me.
Everyone good? Go ahead.
Larry, you had said something there that got cut off a little. I had talked to Patrick Collins to ask him who at the legislature could help us in trying to conduct these public hearings. And it turns out it's Patrick himself who does that. So he would be a good contact for us to work with on how we can do our public hearings.
So not related
was
to
not
the
part of the
minutes. Yeah,
Right.
not part of the minutes, but as a follow-up. Okay.
Right.
Is this, okay, so then I think we corrected the typos and so forth. Are these minutes now, Marie, and we have to figure out your issue otherwise of why you're not getting the emails?
Oh, when you send the emails out, are they supposed to show up in my regular Albany County email box?
Yes.
Because I'm not getting them. I think I had mentioned before that I wasn't getting them, so I'm not sure why.
Well, we do have an action item to see about, I'll stop sharing if we can, to see about that we're using the distribution list and to see if everyone is getting that distribution list. When I go into the system, I can take a look at and I can show you this. I can open the distribution list and I could see all the people on it, and it does include you. So I think there might be an issue because I'm still, what was it, 2 weeks ago or last week, I sent out a tell me if you got this email, and I'm still, and I got some additional this week with Leaf and Warren, but I didn't get anyone from the MMD in there. And yet I can see that they're in the distribution list. So I think we have a technology issue. So I can show you that how you can see. Hold on, I'll stay here a second. And I'm going to go to my mail. And if I do a new message and I put in redistricting commission, and there's a way to expand. See, there's 11 members.
But
Come
are those 11 members, the 9 commission members and the 2 interns?
Oh, it could be. It could be, yeah. Because
Yeah.
it had been different. You're right. It had been different. And it may have been that they changed it when we talked about getting you your own. It could be that it used to include, because I've checked it. So let's make a note. I'll stop that. Technology. I have to figure out, and this is where a side note from the minutes here, but need to figure out in technology a better support structure. I think they're used to, when they onboard people, they're used to those people getting added into an existing department, and we're a totally new department to them. So there's not I feel like there's been gaps in the support for us because of that. So I have to figure out the distribution list piece and adding the MMDs.
Patricia, in the same regard, I mentioned before we started the meeting, today at least, I was not able to get into the county email system at all. I kept getting routed to a system administrator page, and I was getting a message that I wasn't authorized for access. Now, it may have been my mistake. I may be clicking on the wrong link, or I may have made an error in trying to log on, but it's happened multiple times.
Okay.
So
What
I may
I-
have lost my authorization. I'm not sure.
Right. So why don't we finish the minutes piece, Larry, and then let's talk for a minute about the technology as a whole. You want to do that?
Sure. If there are no other comments on the minutes, could we have a motion?
Let me ask one question. I
Sure.
thought when we met, Larry Malden was briefly joining us there. Marie, do you remember Larry being at all part of last week's meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I pulled the registration list in Zoom, which shows everybody who's in, whether they're in for a second or whether they're in for the whole time, and he wasn't in there.
That's weird.
Yeah, so now I know we can't trust that. But that's where I went and I pulled the report. So Zoom creates a report that shows attendance. But we will add, let's go, let me go modify the minutes again so that it's all, we get it correct, because right after this, we turn these minutes into a PDF.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Marie,
so. okay.
Marie, was Larry with us for very long, or was it just a few minutes that he was part of our meeting? Can you remember? You're on mute, Marie.
I don't remember exactly when he signed on.
Let me ask a question about what has been said about the PR going to Patrick Collins.
No,
Did
can we
agree-
stay on the same, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can we just get through the minutes before we go off into another direction?
Yeah, but this is a part of the minutes, but I'll wait till
okay.
this topic is finished.
He said it's part of the minutes, Joan?
It was, because I understand that it was said that Patrick will be responsible for the public relations. Was that a part of the change you made to these minutes?
Not at
No.
all.
No,
Okay.
That was not part of the conversation.
If there aren't any further corrections or changes, I would move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Warren, second.
Okay.
and I want to thank, I did see Warren just briefly. Thank you for the clarification on notes versus minutes. I never had that before in my entire life, and that's good to know. Thank you for that.
All in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. Joan?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Julia. Okay. You want to talk about technology now, Patricia?
Yeah. What I'd like to do is to reach out to the Chief Information Officer and talk about support for us. I know that we have multiple needs, and I think we're going to have even more needs as we go into the public hearing. Typically with public hearings, you live stream them in either YouTube or Facebook or both, which means we have to set up accounts and everything else under the Albany County infrastructure. But I think we need a better understanding of who to go to on certain technology things. So for instance, I don't know how much Jen, as the webmaster, really sets up email lists and things of that sort, to get a general guidance on how best to use them, or if Leap's having an issue, who do we call? How do we handle this? And to have them just recognize that we're not the typical onboarded people. We are a completely different, and in the lessons learned document, I started to put some stuff in there I stopped, but in the lessons learned document, I end up thinking that this commission should, at the very beginning of it, have a meeting with the CIO and say, here's what we're about. We're unusual for you. Let's talk about support. Yes, Warren, I did get the directory, interestingly, and I posted it in the SharePoint. Interestingly enough, I immediately went from the table of contents down to where the technology was, and it was blank. It just skipped it. So that's where I went back to both Patrick and Nicole, and Patrick said, oh, look, it's for some reason it's under management. And all it has is just the CIO, not the directory of that department as it does in other ones where they break it out into function. So it's lacking. It's definitely lacking from my perspective. So with the approval of, of the commissioners, I'd like to hear if it's okay if I send an email and ask for a meeting, a brief meeting to discuss the commission's needs. And I can, if you want, Marie, we can, cover MMD plus ACRC, but would also like to know
Yes,
who else wants to get.
I would like to be in it. I agree with the comment you made. I think it's a little more than that because, I think we're wasting our time trying to identify who we need to go to for what. I don't even think those people that we go to really have an understanding of who we are or why we are or any of that. So as part of that process, we're also giving them an overview, which they really, by the time we go to them, they should already know that we're going to be coming.
Yeah, because I also think there's going to be potentially a need for mapping software being installed somewhere. And that, they're going to need a heads up on that and understand what that's about. So it's just best that we, as soon as possible, level set that. So I can reach out, but I don't know if I should I don't think I should put all the commissioners on it, but just trying to recognize who else. So I know Joan's been my ACRC web person. Marie, you've been there, and Kishana was your web person. And Larry, I don't know whether you want to join as really just the chair, but is there anyone else? Should I include those people? Is there anyone else that wants to or should be included or feels that they should not be included if I said you should?
I think if we have a couple of people from each group, that should be sufficient.
Okay.
I don't know that I need to be on it.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll do the little tech subgroup.
If we have no one else, I'll join because 2 on our side. So if there's already 2, I'm good. But if not,
I think it's 2 already, Warren, because I've got Joan as my web person, right? Joan, you're good for doing this with me?
Yes.
Okay. And I might unfortunately have to ask him for a meeting in the off hours based on my work schedule, but we'll see what we can work out. If you could do a lunchtime, then maybe.
No problem.
Okay.
And that goes to the point that I was about to bring up about the PR, because it's the same issue, the same principle, the same thing, because I reached out by looking at the website to ask a question and I got a response. And now I'm hearing something today that Patrick is going to be a part of this. And I'm not clear on, did we agree to do that? Or is this just a volunteer? I'll help do this.
Joan, Patrick is the one who has the technical experience of actually setting up and running public hearings. He is the person we're going to reach out to as to how you do this. That's all.
Well, I have a document received by another PR person from the county that gives the information in writing. So, but I'm thinking on what we're doing for this technology to be across the board. Because again, we are treading in a different place by using someone who supposedly we're independent, but we're not acting like we're independent.
So can you
Just using
share?
him as a resource.
I'll share the document that I received. Yes, I will.
I mean, I agree that it's across the board because, I mean, I think in terms of like, I mean, like, I've never been an employee of Albany County, so I don't understand Albany County processes. I don't know who the Albany County departments are. So I am learning as I go along, but at the same time, in having to do that, I'm spending time on stuff that I shouldn't be spending time on right now. And also, all of these departments that we go to, they have their whole other body of work. And at the same time, we have this timeline that needs to keep moving. And I don't know how much has been conveyed to them relative to the urgency of them providing support to us as we need it.
So Marie, I agree with you. I was going to the CIO for technology needs, but when you talk contracts, when you talk purchasing and everything else, that's a conversation then that needs to go higher than just the CIO. That's a conversation in the county exec's office with there being an understanding of us and our needs and how it should fit into the overall priorities going on in the county.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what information, if any, were conveyed to these departments about the existence of these two bodies, which would be requesting support from them.
So I don't know, Larry, do you want to?
But to date, I believe the only areas in which we have really required county support have been on technology and on purchasing,
Contracts, yeah,
which is right,
Intern-
which is
legal,
purchasing.
legal,
Purchasing, HR,
intern-
HR.
Department of Law. The person who handles the business processes, I think that's Nicole Chambers. I don't know what department.
No,
that-
she's the legislative office.
Oh, okay.
I want to jump in here and point out that a lot of these organizations are dealing with the consequences of COVID. And we're also seeing quite a few county employees who are probably impacted by COVID in their families and elsewhere. And I think we have to be a bit understanding that we're putting our needs on top of the needs that are already out there in county government. And I think another thing that has happened, and I'm trying to be gentle in how I phrase this, but we cut Pat Collins off from all association with us because we're proving our independence. But when we cut off the county legislature, we cut off their influence with the departments. And we can't go back then and say to Pat Collins, Pat, we need your help with information services because we're not able to get this and this and this, or we need your help with purchasing. And he was helpful. He was helpful with purchasing. He helped me with getting the contracts board to very quickly approve our contracts. So on the one hand, we are trying to prove our independence and trying to be independent by not being associated with the county legislature. And on the other hand, we're identifying that without having the support of leadership in the county, including the county legislature, we can't always get what we want from the departments in the kind of timeline that we'd like to see. So some of this is our own doing here. And I think we need to understand that. And we need to maybe be more willing to talk to people like Pat Collins and others to get them
I
there
don't-
for us
I mean, I don't
without having to worry
know.
about them causing any loss of our independence.
I don't think that's
For
the issue. I mean, I've reached out to people who have been super responsive. So I'm not saying that they're not necessarily being responsive. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that part of the lesson learned here is that there needs to be more of a process. Like, we shouldn't be figuring out as we go along who we need to reach out to for a specific issue. We should know that already. And I'm not saying that's the fault of the departments. because I don't think it is.
Patricia?
So, Tom, I definitely want to respond on that because it was interesting that I don't think we cut Pat out so much. It was mutual. When the interns, I had a meeting with the legislative staff when the interns were hired, and it was Pat basically saying, we're out here, guys. We're done. You got interns now. But the key to that is that I don't think we should be using Pat as the resource. It should have been, and we can do this now, that someone else higher up in the hierarchy of the county government really be our support and way through to guide us into what we need, who to go to. So I don't think it should be Pat. I think it really should be somebody general in the county. And that's where with the IT, that's why I would go to the CIO and so forth. So I agree that Pat, definitely, we cut Pat out, but Pat cut himself out very clearly with me in that meeting with the interns. And, you know, it was a question of, you now have interns, we're not supporting you anymore.
As to staff support, that is absolutely correct. Yes. By the same token, Pat has always been responsive
He's helpful.
when questions have arisen.
He's
Sure.
very helpful.
Joan, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I wanted to, I did, because I think when we use Pat as the go-to, you put Pat in a bad situation as well as us. It's just like for information on our contracts, we went to Karen Storn to find out the information directly from the source. When I wanted to find out about the public hearing, I went to a PR person. We have two at Albany County to ask the question and ask that they send it in writing. So making Pat the go-to person puts this in a place that I don't think it should be. And I understand it started out that way because we needed it, but I don't think it should continue in the same way that it was in the beginning. We had different ideas about the contracts and their work, but I think we as a commission need to be more responsible. I think there's certain things we did not ask questions about in the beginning that we could have. We waited for Patrick to answer our questions from all of these different units when we could have gone to the sources in the units. So I agree that I think we should be a little more hands-on. Thanks.
I don't know that there's anything else to say on this at the moment.
Larry, one other
Yes.
thing to say though is, are we going to take an action item to talk at a higher level in the county about supporting our needs, not just the technology, but overall? Or do you feel like that's not necessary? Or do we feel like it's not necessary at this time?
I'm not sure what we need that we're not getting. I understand on the technology side that there are pieces that are falling through the cracks. I'm not sure what else we need that we're not getting. And I'm not sure exactly what other than rattling the cage would be accomplished.
I think, and I'll ask Marie here. We're past a lot of these processes. She's in the thick of them. So it isn't necessarily, I think, an ACRC concern so much as it is an MMD concern, because they're still in the thick of a lot of the things that we've already been through, the hiring of interns, the RFPs, you know, the contracts, legal, that sort of thing. So do we leave that to Marie at this point because the MMD is in the thick of it versus us as a commission as a whole? And Marie, please, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So.
Well, I mean, as I said, we're learning as we go along. We have reached out to a number of Albany County departments. We have gotten some level of responsiveness, and we've also been using the commission as a sounding board to figure out how we do stuff.
So you're okay then staying with the current process that you're going through?
I mean, I think it's a lesson learned. And I don't think that we should be learning as we go Now we're at public hearings and we're trying to figure out how to proceed with public hearings because we don't really have a sense of how to do that. So every time we hit an issue, if it's someplace we've never been, we have to go and we have to figure out who's the contact and how do we go about it, which it shouldn't be like that.
Okay, so I would ask that you put it in the lessons learned document. Sorry, Larry.
I don't think we should stray away from what this conversation started out by trying to find someone in the county other than Pat Collins to help us do what we need to do. I think we should have that information. I think we should have it for the public relations. I think we should have it for the stenographers that I understand public relations. When we have our public hearings, we will need. There's a email that was given for that. And I think we should stay on that course of finding out who can help us without going to the same person all the time to guide us through Albany County all the time. So I think that, Patricia, that idea you came up with for the technology should be across the board, especially with what we are facing at this point in this process.
Tom, hadn't you had some conversations in the county with regard to PR?
I have, but there's so
No.
many parts.
That wasn't
talking
to you,
me?
Joan, that was to Tom.
Okay,
We had initially tried to wrestle with getting the Times Union interested, and I think they are interested in running a story, but they want that public hearing date to lead the story with, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. I think the last I knew, we were talking about setting up a subcommittee of our group to deal with public relations and to try and come up with some ways, especially in areas like social media. I'm not experienced in that, but I know others are, where we can get more publicity out there for our upcoming first public hearing and for the ones to go beyond that.
Hadn't you had some conversations with the county with regard to their public relations folks and whether they could be a resource to us? I thought you had, no?
I thought initially when we
I
were
did.
talking again with Pat Collins that he had identified somebody within the legislature to do it. But when I went back to him, he said no, that he does the public hearings himself. And the interns were welcome to talk to him about how to work the mechanism behind the scenes to make the public hearings work.
Okay, thank you. Warren?
Yes, I just wanted to say I support what some of the sentiments of what Patricia and Joan were saying. And it's definitely not a knock on Pat. I understand Tom's points as well, but Pat is in a sensitive position as and I think I looked it up, personal counsel of the majority leader. So he's a great guy and knows lots of stuff, but I mean, in terms of the independence of this commission, is not necessarily the person you want to necessarily be fully associated with throughout this process when other people start asking those questions. So I like the guy, but we need a single point or someone who we can call to help us out. Other than Pat, we can still use him where needed, like with hearings and stuff, or if he's an expert, he's the expert, but not the everyday, all the time. Let's call Pat. I don't think that's workable. And Joan has been saying that probably for the last 2 months.
I don't think we call Pat for everything, but I think that,
everything.
go ahead, Joan.
I'd like to ask this commission to make a decision today about going to do what was suggested in the beginning for the technology, but let it cover not only technology, but public relations and any other thing that we come across moving forward. I have a document from someone in Albany County that says the public relation must stay in the Times Union for 5 days. We must give 3.5 days to get a stenographer to do the transcription of the public hearing. There's a lot that we can do and must do before that happens. And it has to come from us and not someone in Albany County.
Patricia?
I make a motion that we vote as a commission on whether to have a conversation at a higher level at the county in terms of the support for this commission. And who we, and having potentially a single point of contact that we can use to go forward.
Is there a second to that motion?
I
Leif.
second.
Is there any discussion?
Well, let me ask this question. We've sort of said that we don't want to be associated with the county legislature. The other major power in county government is the county executive's office. Are we looking for someone in the county executive's office to take this on? I mean, they have no direct involvement in legislative matters. They, in theory, are independent of the legislature, as the executive is directly elected by the entire county. That may be the logical place to turn, but I don't know anybody there that we could approach to ask about it. Maybe somebody else on the panel does.
I think we can reach out at the county exec level, because that's exactly, and I do have a contact name. I'm not sure if they're still there. Because that is exactly where the county executive oversees the procedures, the operations of the county government. That's exactly what we need, support from the county operational processes in order for us to be efficient in getting things done.
I would say yes to that, Patricia, but one large caveat, the legislatures are usually always independent of the executive. So as you know, so they're dual fiefdoms, but the executive office is the best place to go. But so I think we're on the right path then.
Yeah, to me, because the executive office is separate and apart from the legislature, that's exactly the reason why I think we should go there.
The discussion? If not, then those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand, plus Joan and Julia.
Aye.
Julia, you're muted.
Sorry, for some reason I couldn't unmute. Did you hear my aye?
No, okay. The motion passes. Are there?
Is there any abstentions or?
There were 6 votes in favor.
I'll abstain.
Tom abstains, and I abstain.
6, 7, 8. We're missing one. Oh, Cedar's
Cedar.
not here. Cedar's not here. Thank you. Just trying to get it right for the minutes. The notes,
Yeah.
the notes.
The notes, just for clarification on the vote, Tom, I thought the proposal was consistent with your last option, which was that we reach out to the county exec. I thought those were all still aligned and in sync. So of course you don't have to explain your vote, but I just thought we were all kind of on the same page.
I kind of have mixed feelings about this. I'm more comfortable abstaining, but I have no objection that we are moving ahead in this direction.
Okay, we have now had a motion by the commission to move forward in this direction to make contact. We need to figure out how we're going to do that. I do not have any contacts in the county executive's office.
Well, since I do, I guess does it need to be me, or can I pass that contact information along?
You can pass the contact information along.
Does anyone, go ahead.
Patricia, who is it that you know in the exec's office? I don't know anybody there anymore.
It's Mike. Oh, I have to go back and look at the directory because it was Mike. I have to look at the directory.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, only because I've traced stuff from the legislature and going back to, county execs, okay, and following up multiple times. So I might not have the right contact there, but I have a contact.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm willing to do that if no one else volunteers.
And Warren, I suppose we could also use the directory that's in the,
Right.
that's in the SharePoint.
Thanks,
And what-
Warren.
Okay,
Okay, on the agenda, the next item was the current status of the AppGeo and New York Law School contracts. AppGeo had a few, I have sent both of them on to them. AppGeo had a few relatively minor changes that they wanted to make to the contract. County Attorney's Office approved those changes, and AppGeo has signed it and returned it to the County Department of Law. I spoke briefly with Professor Weiss, and he has the contract, and it is making its way through the New York Law School processes. So that's where those stand at the moment. When I had a brief conversation with AppGeo, initially, when I first let them know that they had been awarded the contract, they were suggesting the beginning of February for our training on mapping. And so I just point that out. I don't have anything further on that from them, but I just, in terms of people remembering that that's where we're headed. Warren?
yeah, just a quick point on that, and it relates to something Patricia said earlier. Our mappers, is there going to be a computer issue? I mean, I don't even know how that works. Do they come in with a set of computers, or they have a master computer back at the office? So that's just one of those, I guess, in the future questions of how that's going to be shared and tabulated, but I guess we'll get that information in the future.
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer to that. Their proposal includes providing software.
So Larry, sorry to interrupt. If you could, in your next conversation with them, ask them if it's software as service, in other words, web-based, or whether something needs to get locally installed, physically installed, because that'll be important with technology.
Mhm.
Just from their website, when I was doing the subcommittee, it appears pretty clear from the website that it's software, but I agree that we should follow up just to clarify, but I think that it's likely that it's software.
Right, but it could be web-based software, like Patricia said. So that's the thing.
Right. I meant that they're not going to have to come here physically to install anything, but whatever, we should follow up. I'm just saying from what we know from the subcommittee.
Mark?
I would just make a suggestion that we ask somebody from AppGeo to join us next Monday or one of the following Mondays so they can answer all. We're sitting here, we're going to spend 10 minutes debating whether it's software, what we need to have done, when they could just have somebody join our meeting for 15 minutes, answer all our questions, explain how long the training is going to be so we can set about the right amount of time when they're ready to train us. I don't think it'd be hard for the company to join us for 15 minutes or so.
They had indicated that the training would be about an hour and a half.
Okay.
I think they did a pretty good job of outlining stuff.
When we first signed on today, some of us were talking about an upcoming session online about redistricting that Professor Weiss is involved in.
Yes.
And several of us had signed up, but I want to make sure everybody knew about this. Did
Oh.
we all?
No, I don't know about that.
Okay. Trying to remember who sent that out when it first
I
came.
did. I sent out the information on that. It is on Thursday. I can send you it again, Julia.
Okay, and maybe
it's-
I might have overlooked it and I apologize.
It was probably early last week. I think I may have sent it out.
It's the League of Women Voters of New York State doing, discussing county level redistricting.
Got it. I'm certain that I can find it with that information. You don't need to bother.
Okay, but it was an email from me
Okay, perfect. Thank
that
you.
had the registration information.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom?
I just wanted to follow up on something. We had talked about whether or not the MMD folks were in with redistricting commission. Does the MMD want to have its own group that would be just, MMD at albanycounty.com or spell it out at albanycounty.com? That would give us then redistricting at Albany County, NewYork.gov. I'm saying it wrong. And then we would have another one for the MMD, or are we going to try to put everybody all together, all of us under redistricting, even though some of us will be MMD?
I think that MMD already was in the process of moving in that direction. Patricia, did you?
I thought, Marie, that when we were working on the web together, that what we had said, and this is why I'm surprised, is that we were going to have the ACRC distribution list include us and the MMD, but then the MMD would have a separate that was specific for them. Marie, please tell me if I have, so that anything that came into the commission, the ACRC would go to both, and then separately if somebody wanted to go to the MMD. Marie, just clarify if I got that correct.
Yeah, I think we did discuss that. When we were having the discussion, we weren't sure of how the technology behind it would work in terms of making sure stuff got distributed. So I don't think we've
Well, if you want that, if that's the way we want it, I know how the technology should work and I can instruct them to just do that. But I do think you need to decide how you want the public to have an email for you. So
Well,
we named it and gave it to technology. So you just need to think about what email address you want them to assign you.
yeah, I replied to your email earlier and I put that in the email.
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
That's all right.
And
Warren,
that
you
does
still
answer
got
my
your-
question, so thank you.
Warren, you still got your hand up. Is that intentional? Okay. Next thing on my agenda was establishment of finance and PR committees. And we had talked at our last meeting about having joint groups with the MMD. Leif had volunteered to be on the finance committee. And I had asked that folks consider volunteering for one or the other. Mark?
I would join the finance because quite honestly, I'm not that good on the PR side. So, and I'm good with numbers, so I'll jump on the finance side if no one else wants it.
Joan?
I had planned to volunteer as well.
For which committee?
Finance.
Okay.
And the MMD has Larry Malden. And I'm gonna say Nick Mazza.
Can I ask a clarification? Are
Sure.
we
Right.
talking about the finance committee or both committees?
Finance.
Okay. So we have 6 people,
It looks like 5.
5?
Mark, Leif, Joan, Larry Malden, and Nick Mazza.
Okay, great, thank you.
And on the public relations side,
Sorry, just to interrupt 1 second. It might be good to say who amongst them are gonna do the organizing of them instead of just leave it a group at large.
yes, Patricia.
Sorry.
Who's interested in being on the PR group? We know that this is a real need that we have, and I know that none of us feel entirely comfortable as having any expertise in it. Warren?
Yeah, I'll be on it.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I've been told I got the gift of gab or something like that.
Is there someone else? I think we should have a couple from each of the committee and the commission. Tom? Thank you. Do you have anyone on the MMD group that you know of, Marie?
Myself.
Okay.
Adrian, can you hear me?
Adrian, you're muted.
Yes, I can hear you, Marie.
Will you do the PR committee?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
And I think it probably makes sense to have a lead from each group. Leif, will you be the commission lead on the finance group? And Warren, will you be the commission lead on the PR group?
Sure.
And Marie, who would you want to be the lead on the MMD side?
Adrian can be the lead. This is for PR, right?
That's for PR, and we also need one for finance.
Larry Malden,
Okay.
and we'll add one more person to finance since y'all have three, Constance Graves.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Constance Graves.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay,
Larry,
so
very
yep.
quick question. Is there a defined scope of work for the committee? For my instance, I'm just sort of thinking, this doesn't include fully like the public hearings and all of that, or I'm just wondering, or getting the word out. Did we define the scope?
I think that the immediate scope is figuring out what it is that we need to do and how it is that we would go about doing it rather than physically carrying it out. I think that some of those pieces may very well result at the back end, but I think right now we need to figure out how we're going to go forward. And whether there is a recommendation that we bring in some outside talent, how we would go about that, what it is that we would want that outside talent to carry out for us, what we think we need in the way of public engagement and public relations. So I think that at this point, we're really down at the baby steps level.
Thank
Is that
you.
helpful? Okay.
Yes.
And on the finance side, I think that what we need to do is have at least some rough idea of what our budget needs are likely to be for the rest of the year, and how we how far along we think we already are in having spent what we have.
Okay, we can work on that.
Okay. All right. The next item on my agenda was periodic public reporting. And as I think everybody realizes, I have been very reluctant to issue a press release, because at least to me, a press release has to have a story that it's trying to tell. Tom had suggested that we do some periodic reporting both to the public and to the legislature on what we've been up to. And he took a first crack at putting together such a report. It's about a page long of just really recounting what we've been up to for the last few months. I know not everyone has had an opportunity to review that at this point in time, but I just did want to mention it and see if there were any comments on the idea itself. And beyond that, obviously, there can be comments on the draft that was circulated. Yes, Patricia.
So once we have this, I think, I just want to note that, do we steal a lot of it and update the website too? Because I know, I felt like the website, while we're still getting the MMD up is one thing, but we're already needing a website update regardless. It still is showing us in very initial stages. So maybe we use that for both.
I would think it is something that we would post on the website, and certainly I think that we're probably going to have things to post on the website on a regular basis. I would certainly think that we ought to be posting at least our minutes there. But that's a separate set of discussions. But certainly, yes, I think that the report is something that we would put on the website. Leif.
You probably already mentioned this, but to whom would we report, especially in the legislature, given our sensitivities about independence?
I would think that it would be to the majority leader and minority leader.
Okay.
And to the chair of the Black Caucus.
Yeah, I see no problem with that, because most of what we have accomplished has been administrative in nature, and it's just a progress report on how we are in terms of getting organized.
Right. I had also circulated a couple of potential drafts for how we would respond to communications from legislators. One was a rather harsh response, essentially saying, don't call us, we'll call you. And the other was, it was a little kinder and gentler. I don't know if anyone had any comments.
Yeah, I did, Larry. I think I sent them along via Outlook a few hours back. The first one of the comments was, I think Marie had brought up a point that was in the FAQs about drawing a more harder line on the prohibition. So it's not getting more strict like you said you were, but just being a little bit more clear that, and I think it was in there, that we're prohibited from whatever that says. But and we don't have to do it verbatim, but just something a little hard, more stronger.
It's not clear to me what the provenance, the origin of that FAQ is. But certainly the local law itself is much less severe.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thanks.
We are coming up on the our 1 hour point, but I did want to at least go back to something that we have talked about and not resolved at all. And that is, when are we going to have our public hearing? I think at this point, we're talking about late February. I don't know if folks have thoughts or predispositions towards a day of the week that you think makes more sense than others, or a time of day that you think makes more sense than others. In just musing about it, my thought was that probably a weekday makes sense, but a range of times, something like 4 to 7 or 4 to 8, something like that, that breaches a range of work hours for folks. Yes, Patricia.
So I think we do need to lock into a date soon. My concern is, and maybe we answered this, that the PR group is going to take the lead on organizing everything that needs to get done in order to hold a public hearing. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's necessarily correct, no.
Okay, I
would say probably not, but we'll talk about it, because the interns were going to be part of that preparatory work in the public hearings. You know what I mean?
Yes, as a person who's done a lot of that kind of work, I think it takes somebody to lead on organizing this event. It's not a minor event, it's a major event with a lot of coordination that needs to take place, including PR and technology setup, and as well as receiving the input and managing the input. So I think I want us to put a date down, but I think we need to really think about how are we going to pull this off, because I think you need somebody to orchestrate the entire process. Somebody who's going to see it all together. And maybe Larry, that you as the chair, I'm not sure, but there's more moving pieces than you probably realize at this point.
I think that's probably true, that there are more moving pieces to it than I realize. But I also think that until we have a date that we're working against, that it's all going to remain quite amorphous.
Agree. I do agree. I think we need to put a stake in the ground. But at the same time, we need ownership.
Patricia, you seem to know more about the legislature than most of us. When they have their public hearings, is there a particular, I think they do them on weekdays, but do they do them at 6:30, which is when they have their public comment period before the legislative meetings, or are they more like 7 or 7:30, or are they earlier the way Larry had laid out?
So public hearings are always on a Tuesday at 7 p.m., but the attendance at them is usually, I mean, I've been at a lot of public hearings and I'm one of maybe 2 people speaking. You don't get a lot of participation. And a lot of that is because there's no PR about a public hearing when they're held. So I think it's like the third Tuesday that they normally do them at 7 p.m. And there's not a lot of participation. I hearken back to what the state commission, the ACRC, did with their public hearings. And their first one was a listening session, right? Or first set was a listening session. And that was over a longer time frame on one day, so that it accommodated people who during the day versus evening. So I think theirs were like 4 to 7. I'd have to go back and look. And what they did is that, and as a person who was working, when I signed up, I had to say what time. And in a couple of cases, I said 5:30, and they would come back to me. A coordinator came back to me and said, oh, they've only got people who are up till 4:30. Is there any way you can go earlier? Otherwise, they'll take a dinner break and then come and get you after.
Patricia, was it transcribed?
I wouldn't know. It was recorded for sure, and all of those meetings are not just the meetings, but they also took written testimony, all of which is on their website. So my suggestion is we go with a weekday and that it be like 4 to 8 or something like that, and have people sign up for a time slot. You have to manage that sign up process.
I would suggest we might avoid the third Tuesday if that's when the legislature holds its. You wouldn't want to conflict with that.
Although, Tom, just so you know, the number of times on the third Tuesday they actually have it depends on what legislation is pending. So I think in a given year, there might be only 5 out of 12 months that they're actually doing public hearings. So, but yes, I agree, we should avoid it.
Great.
I could check with Pat Collins to see if there's anything on the third Tuesday in February, if that's acceptable to the group.
Just real quick, the third week, I believe, is vacation week for the schools. I don't know if anyone, I actually plan on, I'm going on a 10-day cruise from the 8th to 28th. I know we don't, yeah, if it's not canceled, but and not everyone has to be there, but I just wanted to put that out that, if we don't want to go with the third Thursday or third Tuesday, we go with the first one. And then we could definitely go the 1st of March. And then then we got the month of February because there's a lot of nuts and bolts. Patricia, what you were talking about was we do need somebody to champion this thing from start to finish. Somebody has to be there or things are going to fall through the crack. I've run many camp or not, conventions. And if you don't have one person that's going to be responsible for shepherding this all the way through, it's not going to work. You need somebody that's going to, or maybe two if you want to have one from the MMD and one from us, but you have to have somebody that's shepherding this whole thing through, or something's going to fall through the cracks.
Marie?
Let me ask this question, though.
Hold on a minute, Tom.
Yeah.
Hold on. Marie, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a check on my understanding. So all of these public hearings are going to have to be recorded and they're going to have to be transcribed because ultimately information on public input that comes out of these hearings has to be shared with the legislature. Is that correct?
They did not, I mean, the transcriptions for the New York State IRC, there are none that I know of. They're only recordings. They may
Don't
have had
recall
it
if it said that
transcribed.
it had to be transcribed or not.
Albany County does on some of theirs. They hire transcribers. They do.
They
So
do.
we can choose, again, here is another independent thought. Do we want to transcribe for people who may or may not? We have to make that decision, or the committees have to make that decision and bring back a.
There's a significant expense to it.
I don't think I saw anything that says that. Sorry. I don't think I saw anything that said that it needed to be transcribed.
I
was
don't recall that
thinking
either.
In terms of the public input that has to be provided to the county legislature at the end of it, like that information needs to be.
We need to provide a report to the county legislature, yes, in addition to the legislation.
Okay.
Larry, my question was whether or not this is a joint public hearing with the MMD and the ACRC. Kind of sounds like we're headed that way, and I have no problem with that, but I think we should be clear about whether this is together or whether we're each going to hold an initial public hearing.
We had talked about that at one point in time, and I think we had concluded that at least for this hearing, that it made sense to be a joint hearing.
Yes. Initially a joint hearing, and then down the road, if they feel they need to have a separate one, to get those input directly for them, then do separate ones. But the initial one should be just combined.
And I think we recorded that as decisions
Yes.
in our log, if I'm not correct.
The other side of it is if we're talking about something that would be a multiple hour hearing, and if we are sincere in getting the public's views, I think we all, as members of the commission and as members of the MMD, have to make a commitment that we're going to listen to the whole thing. You may not be available to listen to all of it when it's happening live, but we really have to say that we're going, each of us, to make the commitment to listen to everything that's said at the public hearing.
That's a good point, Tom. Let me suggest this, that over the coming week, we all consult calendars and come up with at least a few dates that you think would make sense towards the late part of February. And with the constraints that we had mentioned, which is a late afternoon into the evening and a weekday. And let's all try to resolve this question next week.
Mark, a follow-up question. You talked about the third week of February, but February is kind of strange this year. The week that has President's Day in is actually the last week. Is that the week we think the schools are all off, or is it the week before, the week of the 14th?
It's the week of the 21st. At least that's Bethlehem schools.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's the week of the 21st, because I'm out the 18th through the 28th. But it's not like I don't believe every one of us has to be there. I wouldn't hold that up for that. If we found the best date during that week, by all means. I mean, you have more than enough experience to hold the listening session. But
Yeah,
it's just that 1 week, the 21st through the 25th, many schools are going to be out, and I don't know if we want to jump into that.
Yeah.
Are we
Larry,
asking
And
for a
folks do tend to
3 hour?
go away. Pardon me,
Larry?
Joan?
Are we asking for a 3-hour window, weekday, 3 hour?
We didn't specify. We were talking about somewhere in the range of 3 to 4. Marie? You're muted.
Hi.
Your hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I never lowered it.
Okay, Patricia?
And as we think about it this week, if somebody wants to volunteer to be the quarterback, I would devote, as a person who's put on large events, I would devote a little bit of time to that with that person to offload my experience and guidance in that process, but I can't do that. So just if anybody wants to think about it, just know that I'm willing to do some support in guidance in the process.
Thank you.
Larry, before we finish looking again at the
Yes, sir.
calendar, if the 21st through the 25th, that sort of last week of February is when the schools are all out, we might want to avoid that. The Tuesday before that is the 15th, which is not that far away and is the middle of the month. Kind of looks like we might be headed for Tuesday, March 1st, which you had sort of mentioned as a possible date too. So I'm thinking, maybe that's more likely. If we have to avoid that fourth week, it's probably easier to go to the week after than to try to rush things and go to the week before.
Thank you. And then last thing before we go is I would ask if the folks who are leading the two committees, if they can try to get together with their committees this week and bring us some at least initial recommendations as to where we're going. At least some first thoughts. Anything else? If not, is there some motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Tom, second? Patricia,
Second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, all.
Have a good week, everybody.
Be well.
Thanks.